Comic Book Savant, episode 376. Welcome back to another episode of the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This week is going to be the third episode in the Cutting the Stack series that is that's specific to Marvel Comics. I'm going to be reviewing about 8 comics that I've had a chance to read that are Marvel-specific comics that I'll be doing reviews on. But before I get into that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. It's basically just a website portal that has a listing of literally hundreds of different comic book related podcasts. So if you like this show and you want to find more shows like it, stop by the Comics Podcast Network at comicspodcast.com. Literally, they have podcasts that are a single host podcast like myself, roundtable discussion shows. They have shows that are specific to publisher, character, teams. So you name it, they pretty much have a podcast you can find on the network that will fit your needs. So if you have a moment, definitely stop by the Comics Podcast Network over at comicspodcast.com. I would greatly appreciate it. Again, I've been a part of the Comics Podcast Network since the very beginning, and it started with maybe less than 20 podcasts, and now literally there are hundreds of different shows listed there. So again, take a moment, check it out, and I would greatly appreciate it. And last but not least, I'd like to give a shout out to the sponsor for this episode, which is InStockTrades.com, one of the best places you can go online when you're looking for collected editions, omnibuses, absolute editions, Marvel Masterworks, your standard trade paperbacks and graphic novels. They're just a one-stop shop that has a huge inventory. You can pretty much find 95 to 98% of anything that you're ever looking for with a little effort. And if you can't, you can probably email them and they can let you know if they can get their hands on it or not. I've been affiliated with them for, I've been doing the show for almost 13 years. I've probably been a customer of In Stock Trades even longer than I've been doing the show. So probably around 15 years I've had some semblance of a relationship with In Stock Trades. So again, it's not just they pay me to say this. I actually have used their service and love it. So if you're unfamiliar with them, it is InStockTrades.com. They have discounts ranging from 35, 42, up to 50% off. If you place an order that is $50 or more, you get free shipping if you're a U.S.-based customer. If you happen to live outside of the U.S., don't worry. You still get all the great savings, but you just won't get the extra bonus, the free shipping. That's only for U.S.-based customers, but you still save a ton of money. So, don't let that discourage you at all because you still save a ton. Also, check their website weekly. They have deals, their deals of the week, which are the books that are discounted up to 50% off. They rotate the books that they offer under their deals of the week. So you definitely want to check back to that homepage every week to see where you can get that little extra savings on their already low prices. So definitely, if you haven't tried them already, check them out. And if you do try them and you like them, let them know that you did hear about them first on the Comic Book Savant podcast. I would greatly appreciate that. Now, with all that said and all that out of the way, let's jump into the books that I'm going to be reviewing this episode. I kind of jumped all over the board. I've just been really eclectic in the stuff I've been reading lately. I have a ton of backlog through my, like I said, I'm pretty much mainly all digital at this point. So I have a ton of books that I've picked up at different points, and being through Comixology is my main site that I get my digital comics from. So I have a ton of Marvel comic books, just like they have sales all the time where you can get old back issues that would be so expensive for me to get if I bought them in physical form that I can get digitally for 99 cents here and there. So I've read stuff from all different kind of periods. There's some more modern stuff, but I even read some really, really old stuff. And that being said, the first comic that I had a chance to read was Avengers issue 57. This is like old school volume 1, issue 57 of Avengers. I bought this way back when Avengers Age of Ultron came out. I always wanted to read the story of the origin of Vision, and this is the first appearance of Vision in the comics. When that movie came out, Comixology had a big sale on old Avengers comic books that were surrounding Ultron and Ultron's first appearance and Vision's appearance in the comic book. So I bought a few of these older issues and never had a chance to read them. And just one day I was just like, I was rewatching Age of Ultron. It just triggered me to go, and I was reading some comics, and I was like, I'm going to read this issue. And it was definitely an interesting experience. So Avengers 57, it's written by Roy Thomas, art done by John Buscema. Inker is George Klein, and letterer is Sam Rosen. I have to say, I really enjoyed it. We don't get a chance to read these really old classic comics like that because we just, if you go into the comic shop, unless you just have a ton of money, it's just hard to have access to these things. And they're not really trades of these comics out, are not many. Like if you get the Marvel Masterworks and things like that, you can have access to some of these. But again, those even can be, quite an investment in picking up. So just to get these issues for 99 cents a pop and just be able to sit down and read these classic comic books are really one cool thing that is coming out of, digital comics. Now they're digitizing these files and they can, release them on the cheap so you can have access to these classic stories. So this is one other advantage that I really get a kick out of with comics being digitized now, is that you get classics like this on the cheap. But I would have to rate this a 7 out of 10. It was definitely a good read. It's definitely a product, I can't remember the actual publishing date on the comic. I want to say this is like in the 60s. So it's definitely a product of the time. A lot of word bubbles sprinkled all over the place, but it was definitely fun and nostalgic going back reading these classic comics. Black Panther was in the comic as well, in the original, Avengers, as far as, Cap. I think Hawkeye was in it, Wasp, Ant-Man. So it was really just fun. Like I said, I've never read an Avengers comic this old before. So it definitely took some adjustment. It takes a little bit longer to read because there's so much exposition and so many word balloons per page. The medium's definitely changed quite a bit in the way stories are told, more visually and not with so many word balloons, cluttering the page. So that was definitely an adjustment to get to, but it was definitely something that I enjoyed. So again, 7 out of 10, a good read for Avengers 57. The next book I checked out was Squadron Supreme issue 1. This is the Marvel Squadron Supreme series that ran, I think, from 2015 to 2017. It just recently ended. It was written by James Robinson, artwork done by Leonard Kirk. Inker was Paul Neary, colorist is Frank Martin, and letterer is Travis Latham. And I've always had a fascination with the Squadron Supreme. They were kind of like a Elseworlds kind of alternate universe, Earth. They were an alternate Earth kind of story. Over the years, they folded them into the main Marvel universe, and they've kind of bleeded them over with Superion and Nighthawk and all of the different characters. And it was a interesting, series. Like I said, it was just the first issue of it. I picked it up because, like I said, I've always gravitated from the original graphic novel of Squadron Supreme from years ago. I remember being a kid, my older cousins that I've spoken about that got me into comics, were heavy in the Squadron Supreme. So I read the original graphic novel of the original maxi series. I think it was a 12-issue maxi series that I read as a kid. So, and I always just kind of been fascinated by the group. Whenever they roll out a comic, I'll pick up the first issue or the first few when I can find it to check it out. And it didn't blow me away, but it was solid. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10, which I give a rating as I wait for the trade. If it's one of those series that I wouldn't rush out to buy the rest of it to finish up the arc or look for the trades, but like if Comixology had a sale and I could get those trades for like $4 or $5 a pop, I would pick them up and read the series. But it didn't blow me away. It was like, I have to read this now. I have to get these issues. Like it's a top priority type thing. But it's solid enough, and I have enough general interest in the group that I would seek it out if at the right price type deal. The next two comics that I had a chance to check out, I read all new Hawkeye issues 1 and 2. This is from the 2015 series, so this was coming off of the Matt Fraction Hawkeye series when they relaunched it. This is the creative team on this is Jeff Lemire as the writer. Artist is Ramon Perez. Artwork is done by, the color work is done by Ian Herring and Ramon Perez himself, and the lettering is done by Joe Sambino. I would give these two issues, again, solid, but didn't knock my socks off. I definitely want to read the rest of this series because I'm a huge Hawkeye fan. So I love to read all the different series that they have for the character, and I love Clint Barton as well as Kate Bishop, and I've talked about them ad nauseum at different points in the podcast over the years. I just love the Hawkeye character, and I love what they did with them and their dynamic of them being a team and having their separate stories within the Hawkeye book. I really have loved how Marvel has handled the Hawkeye character in the comic books over the past few decades, because it's rough. I'm actually going to have a episode coming out on the YouTube channel in the near future where I'm reviewing some of the old, they did a couple of collections of Hawkeye mini-series that they collected in a graphic novel that I'm going to be covering. So be on the lookout for that. If you haven't already, definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss it when I talk about that in detail. That's going to be coming up very shortly. And like all in all, I gave this a 6.5 out of 10 for both issues. They landed about the same for me. They're on the fringe. They have my interest enough that I would pick them up. I will seek them out and pick them up. But again, it's not of a top priority type thing. I try to go back and read all the Hawkeye stuff, so eventually I will get this. But again, it's definitely not of the standard of what the Matt Fraction run was for me, which I totally loved. But it's a good, it's a good sequel coming off of it. They're handling the character, both characters pretty well. And again, it's interesting, but not must read for me at this point. Next book that I want to talk about is Black Panther, which is the is issue 1 of the 2016 series. It's written by Ta-Nehisi Coates as the writer. Artist is Brian Stelfreeze. Colorist is Laura Martin. And letterer is Joe Sabino. I read the first issue of this. I ended up picking up the first trade. The trade was on sale recently. I picked it up coming off of the Black Panther movie, and I had recently reviewed the trade Who is Black Panther from the early 90s or early 2000s series. I did a review on that on the YouTube channel as well. Shout out to the YouTube channel. YouTube.com/Comic Book Savant. I recently did a review on that coming off of the Black Panther movie, or actually, I read it right before and I reviewed it right around the time the movie came out. So I'm fascinated with going back because I didn't have much knowledge of the Black Panther character in the comics. Most of my Black Panther knowledge came from the movies and the Avengers, the Mightiest Team on Earth cartoon that was done a few years ago that I loved that cartoon. Black Panther was a really big character. So most of my knowledge is comes from those kind of arenas, off away from comics. So I wanted to start checking out some of the comics. But I read this first issue of the series, and again, it was solid. It didn't blow me away, but it felt like I was in the middle of previous stories, because I know Black Panther has been a centralized character in the Marvel Universe over the past few years with a lot of different series and things. So I kind of felt like I felt like I was dropped in the middle of the story, even though it was a number one issue, and they didn't do a ton to catch me up on the previous stuff. So I kind of felt like I was behind the eight ball. But the beginning of the issue started kind of slow, but by the end of it, it piqued my interest enough that I saw the first trade on sale. I grabbed it on the low, and I'm looking forward to reading it and seeing where it goes with the character, and kind of hopefully it can fill in some of those blanks for me, so I can kind of get caught up on the world, and very much Wakanda and the characters that we got to know in the movie are definitely prominent in this series, and Wakanda is a character all unto itself. So I definitely look forward to reading more of it. But this one issue just, I felt out of context, because it didn't do a good job bringing me in as a new reader to the fold. Like I said, I felt like I was definitely missing something, and it's the toughest thing with a number one issue of a comic, that you have to strike a certain balance, I feel, if you're trying to attract new readers, that they don't feel like they're already behind or lost in the story, that you kind of have to fold them in and kind of recap it a little bit better than what was done. For me, personally, I felt like they didn't do the greatest job. So I gave it a 6 out of 10. But again, I'm curious enough about the character. I've already got the next trade, and I'm looking forward to reading more. It was definitely good stuff there. Next, I had a chance to check out Gamora issue 1. This was I can't remember, so the 5 or 6 issue limited series that came out 2016. This was written by Nicole Perlman, which she was one of the original writers on the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, the script for that. We have the artist Marco Checheco, which is one of my favorite more modern artists that has come on the scene in the past 5 years or so. Love his work. Colorist is Andres Mosa, which they normally pair off together, and lettering is done by Travis Lantham. I give this a 7 out of 10. This was a really strong miniseries for me. First issue. I want to read the rest of the miniseries. I think they have it in a trade, and they have the individual issues on Comixology. I checked. This first issue was free as a part of the Marvel Unlimited, so I could just borrow that and read it to check it out. And it's definitely caught my interest, and I want to get the rest of the series and read it to completion. It adds way more depth to Gamora as a character. They fleshed her out some in the Guardians movies, but she really hasn't had the spotlight as much as Rocket or Groot or even Star-Lord. So it's good seeing her off on her own. It's a prequel story before she ever meets up with the Guardians, and I like it. And you see kind of her interaction with Thanos, which kind of leads to some of the scenes we've seen in the trailer for Avengers Infinity War, where we see a little Gamora holding on to Thanos' hand, and how he got custody of her and things of that nature. So it shows more of their relationship and her relationship with Nebula as well. So I've always felt like I was lacking with the character as far as in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's filling in some of those blanks for me and making her a little bit more of a three-dimensional, fully formed character for me. Or I feel like in the movie she's kind of been shortchanged up until this point. It adds a little bit more depth, seeing her kind of background and kind of the demons that she kind of wrestles with. You get more of that through this movie for sure. Last but not least, the last book that I covered 2 issues of the Iron Fist series that relaunched last year in 2017. I read issues 1 and 2 of the Iron Fist series. This is written by Ed Brisson, artwork done by Mike Perkins, the colorist is Andy Troy, and the lettering is done by Travis Lantham. This series didn't blow me away. The first issue I gave a 5 out of 10 to. It just didn't set my world on fire. It felt very much so like the Marvel Netflix series. It kind of follows the beats. I know it was it was released around the time that the show dropped on Netflix, and that worked against it because it just reminded me of those the first half of the season of Iron Fist for me. He's losing his chi, or losing his connection to his chi, and he's talking about I lost it, and he's trying to do all these outrageous things to kind of gain it back. Artwork is pretty solid. The writing was decent, but just the concept around the story they were building just didn't capture me in that first issue. But it was I checked it out through Marvel Unlimited through Comixology, and they had the second issue available for me to check out, so I picked it up and read that, and it built up the surrounding story a little bit better. But I always liked, and I really liked the old Matt Fraction, the Immortal Iron Fist run that they did. They really made Danny Rand a compelling character, and he's kind of an unlikable character in this series to this point. He just seems like a whiny rich dude that don't want to let go of his past glory. So he's not too likable. So I would give the second issue a 6 out of 5. A 6.5 out of 10. I read the 2 issues. Would I finish reading it if the first trade, when that becomes available on Comixology Unlimited? I'll read it because I've already read 2 issues of that first story arc. But I'm not dying to. I wouldn't pay for it. I would definitely, if it comes through Unlimited and I could just borrow the comic and read it, I'll read it. But otherwise, I wouldn't pay my money to read it. At all. It just didn't strike me, and the character's just not likable. It didn't do enough for me as a character for me to be compelled to want to read any further with it. It's sad to say because it's a character that I've always previously liked, but this take they were doing to kind of conjoin it or get him in line to what the Netflix series is, and I'm hoping when season 2 of Iron Fist comes out, they improve the character somewhat in the Defender series, and I'm hoping that they do more work to the character in the second season when that comes out. But as far as this series is a no-go, I can't recommend it by any means. I just think it was a total misfire of the what the character really is, in my opinion. But that's all I have for you guys when it comes to the reviews. As always, stop by the website, comicbooksavant.com. Everything is listed there. If you want to check out some of the YouTube videos and stuff like that, the link, I do have them posted there. They're embedded where you can play them right there within the player. But don't forget, if you have a moment, stop by the YouTube channel and subscribe. Leave comments in the comments fields. You can leave comments on my website as well to let me know what you think. If you want to give feedback, anything like that. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, or you can just at Comic Book Savant on Twitter and Instagram. I also have a Facebook page. You can always check me out on Facebook, facebook.com/Comic Book Savant. So I'm all over the place. If you want to help support the show, I've totally revamped the Patreon campaign. So if you are interested in becoming a Patreon and you want to check it out in further detail and see what the reward tiers are and all that kind of stuff, stop by patreon.com/Comic Book Savant. That's patreon.com/Comic Book Savant, and all the information is there if you're curious or you're interested on what it takes to become a Patreon and help support the show. You can do that there. That's all I have for you guys. Again, definitely, it's really cool. I think you guys are liking these episodes. I'm sticking to what I was hoping to do this year in reading more comics. I've really been reading a ton, so I'm able to do more comic reviews. It seemed like you guys like me kind of separating them out by publisher. I'm still going to do, I recently, a few episodes back, did one for Image. I'm going to be doing a Valiant one, Dark Horse, all the different big publishers. I'm going to be doing specific Cutting the Stack episodes on those. So I'm hopping around, going through now, knocking out the different comics to read. And, I try to do about 8 issues per episode to keep these at a decent length. I don't want to have super long episodes. So it will be another one coming up every, I'm going to try to do at least one of these a month, maybe even 2, just depending on how quickly I get through the different books. So you'll be seeing another one coming up soon. I don't know, will it be DC or one of the independent companies, but it should be. I'm going to try to go in a rotation where I give everybody some love. So it'd probably be like a Dark Horse or a Valiant that you'll see next, since it just recently did Image, and then I'll come back to DC. So I'm going to keep them in a good rotation to give, like I said, to give everybody some love. So be on the lookout for that as well. We're getting there. We're getting there, everybody. We're almost to 400 episodes. I guess we should hit that by year's end. We're about halfway through the year. Well, we're not just halfway. We're not halfway yet. So that's June. So yeah, I think we probably will hit 400 episodes before year's end, and I'm looking forward to that. And I appreciate you guys being there, part of this journey with me. I have nothing but love for you guys. Thank you for all your support again. And I'll see you guys next week for another episode of Comic Book Savant. You have a good weekend and take care. Bye.